I think an investment should be. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but it does start with understand what you're looking for, develop some sort of investment buy box, stay within that investment buy box until you can really master it before you move on to the next thing.
You're listening to Ice Cream with Investors, a podcast that is dedicated to teaching you how to better invest your money so that you can live a more intentional life. I'm your host, Matt Fore, and it is my goal to teach and empower you to remove the roadblocks to your financial success.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Ice Cream with Investors and Micro PE Portal, online assets for the savvy investor by Web Street. I'm Peter Murphy Lewis, your guest host for today. Some of you might know me as a TV host or podcaster, but today I'm currently fulfilling the role of head of growth at Web Street, where we focus to democratize private equity in the online asset space for accredited investors. Today, I'm thrilled to take over this amazing podcast and chat with your usual host, Matt Fore. You all know Matt. He's the real estate advisor with a knack for making complex investment concepts easy to understand. He's transitioned from successful tech sales career to becoming a partner at Next Level Income, where he navigates the world of multifamily, self-storage, mobile home parks, and more. My favorite quote of his is that he removes the toilets and tenants out of real estate investing. It makes me want to invest in real estate immediately. We're going to dive deep into Matt's journey, insights on real estate, and explore his experiences and how they can offer valuable lessons for all of us. I did a deep dive into how he is as a podcast, his questions, his tone, and hopefully I'll be able to throw some of his medicine back at him. So let's jump right in. Matt, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. It's also it's good to be on this side. It's a lot less it's a lot more relaxing on this side.
That was the first thing I was going to ask you. How does it feel not have to do an hour to 2 hours of prep before you walk in and put a microphone in front of your face?
Yeah, well, I still prep, but I think I know thyself very well, so the prep was a lot easier.
Let's dive into some of the topping questions that you normally ask, and then I have an iteration for you. One of the ones you often ask about is routine and daily habits. It's a question that I love. You know, like when I listen to whether it be Tim Ferriss or read his books, I'm always paying attention to what successful leaders do. What's a non-negotiable part of your daily routine, Matt, that you believe has had a profound impact on your mental and physical well-being?
Yeah, I think two things. One, it's waking up early. Most of our listeners know that I like to wake up around 4:00, 4:30 in the morning. That peaceful time before the kids wake up, before your emails and phones are dinging, all those sorts of things. It is my favorite time of the day. If I wake up at like 7:30 and it's like go, go, go from that moment, I don't feel balanced and grounded. So the idea of waking up early and get my workout in is something that you definitely don't want to deal with me on days where I don't get to do that, I would say.
I have two follow-up questions around that is, what do you do like in your first 45 minutes? And then how long have you had that early morning routine?
Yeah, so I've had that routine since 2009, since when I graduated college. I graduated college in 2008. So since 2009, I kind of got into that habit of getting up early and going to the gym. Those first 30 to 45 minutes for me, usually it includes a big glass of water. So you can see my little big, huge 32-ounce Yeti. I try to chug one of those before I get going. And then stretching and journaling, I think, are two things that have really helped me over the past couple of years. Stretching because you're sedentary all night when you're sleeping, and also it just kind of gets the blood flowing. And then journaling is just a big brain dump of what am I thinking about, what have I been thinking about, and what I've noticed is when I get that off of my mind, that I can think a lot clearer. So those two things have been super impactful for me.
Cool. I'm glad you said the water, because I recently took coffee out of the first hour of my day and replaced it with water. And I've been pretty good at not turning on my cell phone or my computer for at least 45 minutes to an hour. What's something that you removed from your daily habits, similar to like what I did with coffee?
It's coffee, actually. So I read some studies, maybe it was Andrew Huber or something like that, that was talking about caffeine is actually a tired suppressant more than an energy booster. So it's actually blocking you from being tired. And when you first wake up, you're not tired. Well, you are tired, but your body is not tired because it's just waking up. So I've removed that, and I try to wait until after my workout these days to have that sort of caffeine.
Great. Let's transition, Matt, into some advice. These will be some fast toppings question. The first one I'm going to ask you is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh man. Time is your most valuable asset. Relationships matter more than you think. The things that you do in your 20s are going to make you successful, or they're going to matter more when you get older, when you get into your late 30s and early 40s. So I've had a lot of self-reflection over the past couple of years around, man, the decisions I made when I was 22 at getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning right after college and starting that workout routine. The idea of picking health and fitness over alcohol and going out to the bars and things like that are really starting to catch up and pay their compound returns. Whereas I'm seeing a lot of friends of mine that didn't make those same decisions growing up or going through that phase. And I wouldn't say they're failing at life. They're just at a different stage. So um, those are the kind of the things let me say this. The one thing I wish I would have done though is gone out and build relationships outside of my circle. And what I mean by that is we all have a friend circle, we all have a work circle. I spent a lot of time strengthening relationships in those and not going out and volunteering in the community or picking organizations that I wanted to be a part of or mastermind groups and things like that. And we are in a relationship business. Everything's a relationship business. So having deep relationships and strong relationships outside of your core really matters as well. So that'd probably be the number one thing I would have told myself.
Matt, I asked you about what advice you'd give yourself probably back when you were 15, 20, 25. Someone gave you that advice and you didn't listen. Who was that wise person in your life that was telling you what to do, or at least showing you what to do, that maybe today you owe them a thank you?
Two people. One, my parents. I was a terrible adolescent. And so I think that my duty is to try to make them proud of the person that I've become because they poured so much into me. And I know they're proud, but I want to continue down that journey. And then I had a coach. I was a swimmer growing up in high school who always would tell me the older you get, the smarter your parents become, and always believed in me when I didn't deserve that belief and always pushed me when I didn't deserve his support. And man, I'm just thankful that he was there the entire journey. So those are kind of two people at that 15 to 25 stage that really influenced me that I would like to say thank you to.
Love it. Let's move into bad advice. What's the worst piece of advice you hear in the investment space?
Real estate is easy. Real estate is passive. Since 2008, we've been in a world where interest rates have been zero. The cost of capital has been zero. And you can make decisions and investment decisions that you just put money in something, and because there's no other home, it's chasing that asset class as well, such as real estate. What we have found is like when interest rates rise and your cost of capital rises, now you have an alternative and you have to be more thoughtful about, hey, do I want this risk asset when I can buy something that's risk free that produces a great return? The second thing I would say is that real estate is passive. For if you want to invest in the deals we do, it's passive, but you still have to underwrite us. When I have my single family portfolio and everybody was saying that is passive, I can tell you for 70% of the time it's passive, but those 30% of it that's not. It's a very hands-on business. So don't believe the gurus you see on Instagram and TikTok saying just buy a property and you'll never have to do anything again.
It sounds like maybe that's where your tagline, removing toilets and tenants, come from. Do you have a fun story that you can share without naming names?
I do. I actually don't think I've shared this on any podcast yet, but something that happened to me early last year was I own a property in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's a duplex. Both of the sides have been rented out forever. Actually, since I bought the place, both of them were paying. When COVID happened, I sent them food once a week because, they were um, impacted by some of the COVID policies around working and things like that. So I wanted to be a nice landlord there. And I don't know what happened, but one of them just stopped paying rent in November. And in December, we were chasing him down, trying to follow up with them. In January, we were trying to follow up with them, sent the eviction notice, and then we got in the property on February. It turns out that they were using the entire place as a bathroom. I will let you kind of fill in with your mind what those details are, but they are not ones you want to hear if you're sitting down for a meal right now. And that was a very, very, very expensive thing to overcome. So that's probably where that comment came from, is that incident was happening right at the same time of tenants
I
and
didn't
toilets.
I didn't imagine that the tagline was going to involve those two things together, toilets
That's right.
and it's as one sentence.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
taken it
It
to a
was
whole new
it was
level.
an interesting experience. That I can say that is probably one of the most interesting stories I've had in this journey so far.
Matt, let's move to good advice that your listeners, that my listeners, our audience can go to. What's an online newsletter around the investment space that you read at least once a month? And it can be free or paid, that maybe you're not learning from it, but you like the way they approach things. It gives you ideas, and to talk about it, share it with your audience.
Yeah, two that I would point out is one, I read Seeking Alpha's Wall Street Breakfast every single morning. 5 stories, high level, and then it's got basically where each global market is, Bitcoin, gold, oil, and then some stories that you can follow at the bottom if you want to learn more. I've read that every single morning of the weekday for probably the past 10 years. It's just part of my morning routine. It's a quick read, and if something's interesting, I can dig in further. One I have found recently is I started following a guy on Twitter called the MHP guy. His name is Chris Comer, and super interesting story. But what I love about Chris is he does a lot of little random businesses. He's selling Bucky's snacks. So he'll go to a Bucky's, buy the Bucky's branded stuff, and he's selling that online. And Bucky's doesn't want to have an online distribution channel. So he's the de facto one. He doesn't have a formal agreement or anything. He just buys it from the store and sells it at a profit. So he does a lot of things like that. He's in RV parks. He's into Bitcoin mining. He started a tree trimming company. He just has a really good understanding, a way of looking at how do you acquire companies? How do you validate an idea? How do you scale a small business into not the next $1 billion company or the next multi-million-dollar company, just something that you could go do as a side hustle and make 150, 250K a year. So he's super interesting and a great Twitter follow.
Those are good tidbits. I don't follow either one of them, but will as of tomorrow.
There
Matt,
you go.
and feel free to take this question and adjust it to fit what makes sense to you. If you could, if you could do any kind of profession besides what you're doing today, what would it be?
I'll give you two answers. I Coming out of college, I was a poli sci major, and the Iraq War was going on at the time, and I got really interested in Middle Eastern politics because I just felt like, we're it's kind of similar to today. Everybody's just screaming at each other. No one wants to sit down at the same table and try to understand the other person's point of view. So I think that, like, being the director of the CIA has always been something that I thought would have been super interesting. I am way unqualified for that today. I don't even know if I would ever want to go do that today. But when I was coming out of college, I thought that would be like the coolest job in the world. It has changed now. I think I wish I would have gone into investment banking. Just the idea of seeing different public equities, private equities, fixed income, real estate, all of that. I just enjoy how something on the other side of the world has an impact to us. So we mostly felt that when the ship got stuck in the Suez Canal last year, right? That ship stopping traffic through the Suez Canal delayed a bunch of shipments around the world. So, like, how do you make that trade? How do you make that play? It's just all very interesting to me how the world interconnects more than we ever even know or imagine it to. So, that seems like a role where you could sit in the middle of that and kind of make decisions.
I think without having known you well before, and I could have potentially predicted the second one, but the first one I wasn't. With no intention of offending anyone inside of the intelligence industry, you're definitely not underqualified. I had a run-in with the KGB in my early 20s in South America and had to coordinate with some things with the CIA. It's cool for maybe a year, but I think it's way more boring than the movies make it. I think you chose a great life, a good investment, a good family, a good place to live. You don't have to live in Virginia, and you have a podcast and you get to say what you think.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's an interesting story that we should take offline. I would love to hear more about those details.
I would love to. Matt, what's one? I think this is kind of related to your poli sci, which is, what is one thing about yourself, no relationship to investing or investments, that impacts your success today as an investor?
Curiosity is the easy answer there. I think my partner will tell you that she says all the time that you're the most curious person, and the ability to view world events and understand how everything connects better than everyone she's ever met. So she tells me that, but I think that just comes from a natural curious nature of like, why are things the way they are, and should they be different? And if I was going to play it a different way, how would I play it? The second thing there is, man, I have to give I've done a lot of self-reflecting over the past couple of years around how much physical fitness and prioritizing working out saved my life and put me on a different trajectory, because I feel like Ironman, that stuff that I do with Ironman and cycling and endurance racing, it's stuff that you have to love it and you have to give to it and you have to pour into it. And the second you stop that, it stops giving to you. So it's this mutual beneficiary of, it's going to humble you, it's going to teach you a lot, it's going to prepare you for success. But you always have to keep doing it, because the second you don't, if I took 3 months off of running, I would not be in shape anymore for running a marathon or a half marathon or something like that. So being physically active and taking that first hour of the day and making sure I pay myself in that form has paid so many dividends that I haven't figured out how to articulate to other people that don't do that or don't have that same approach yet.
Piggybacking on your answer around curiosity kind of leads me into you as a podcaster. I guess let's start off with the question today, present day. How would you describe your interview style? Just so you know where I'm going to go, I'm going to ask, how bad were you your first interview? Because mine was horrible. But let's start off with, how would you describe your style today?
Yeah, I still don't think it's very good, to be honest with you. Like, I'm learning this process of what's interesting about being on a podcast or being the host on a podcast is you have to set yourself in a mindset of being curious, but also thinking about what your audience is hearing and making sure you're asking the question that they might be asking themselves in their head. I think that's what makes a good podcast, is when I listen to somebody and they ask the question that I was thinking about, I'm like, okay, they're a pretty good host.
Agreed.
But it's also really hard because you forget that if you say something bad, if you fumble on something, you can just edit it out. And I mean, 3 years into this, I still haven't figured out how to get past that mental hurdle of you're recording something and the question doesn't come out the right way, stopping and re-asking the question to make sure you capture it correctly. But I think my style is really, I've always wanted to take institutional level knowledge and the things that these guys are talking about on Wall Street and bring it down to the retail level and make it understandable for everybody else. So that's my ultimate goal and style, is when somebody says, "Oh, a synthetic cap rate on a podcast," that I can stop them and say what that means is, or try to help clarify some of the things that they're seeing. So that's my goal for the style. Again, I don't think I'm there yet. I'm still learning every day.
Take me back to something embarrassing when you first started off. I'll share some of my mishaps.
Gosh, dude, I can't even listen to the first 10 episodes that I did. I did it during COVID. I shot it in a room with no carpet, no professional mic. This audio is horrible. I allowed guest, and I still have this habit of letting guests talk too much instead of trying to interrupt and make sure that we're having a good, thoughtful, educational conversation, other than somebody coming on and just pitching their stuff. Because we're all in this to get our message across, but there's a way you could do it tactfully and a way you could do it that's just about you. Some of my listeners don't even know I don't even produce a lot of the podcasts that I have done, because it is somebody coming on just trying to sell their stuff and shove it down their throat. So I don't even produce a lot of it. But embarrassing stories, I don't think I've had an embarrassing story other than my first 10 episodes. I didn't know anything about audio. I didn't know how to interject my opinions. I didn't know how to grab pieces of information and try to clarify it for a listener's point of view. I was just trying to do it, which is my core philosophy anyways. Get going, then get good. So get in the process of doing something. That's the way you'll figure out what works, what doesn't work, and how you can improve.
I can relate to you mentioning, not producing a podcast. At least in my experience, the 10 or 15 podcasts that I have not aired because someone was just pitching themselves. The good thing about it is those types of salespeople are so heavy-handed and running so fast and so busy, they never remember and never come back and ask you where the episode is because they're trying to do 19 podcasts a week, and they also have two kids on the side, and they have to play golf on Saturday to do sales, and then they're trying to, flip homes on the side and be a husband. So
That's right. That's right. I haven't had one single person come back to me and say, "Where is that episode?"
me neither. Uh, why ice cream?
Um, I'm an inner fat kid. I love sweets. It's funny. I don't think I ate sweets a lot in my high school and my college days. When I moved to Nashville, frozen yogurt, froyo, as the kids called it back in the day, was like an interesting thing. I dated a girl who took me to froyo, and I developed a sweet tooth. And so my thought process was like, ice cream with investors leaves it broad enough that if I want to go explore different niches, I can. I'm a real estate guy through and through, but I still have a bunch of equities, a bunch of private investments and businesses and debt and things like that. So it left me open to be there. And then ice cream left it a little uh, lighthearted. So my ultimate goal, Peter, is that, we'll go do conferences and things like that. And people will be like, "Oh my gosh, you're Matt Fore from Ice Cream with Investors. Can I buy you some ice cream?" And that is my plan to get free ice cream for the rest of my life. So that's what I've been working. That's my grand ambition
I
here.
think that could be drop the mic where we just sign. That's my favorite quote so far.
Hey, Bluebell, if you're listening, I accept sponsorships too. Just
I'm
send them directly to
listening.
my house.
When I come to Tennessee, I'll hit you up. I'll take care of you.
There you go.
What do you remember? What secondary options were for names?
No, I don't. I didn't even really think about names. That just kind of popped in my head one day because then it was like, what's the scoop and the flavor of the week and like all these different spinoffs that I don't think I ever looked at a second name. Once I kind of popped in my head, I was like, that's it. That I can't think of another name I would do.
Has your favorite ice cream flavor changed in your lifetime? If so, what are they?
Yeah, it's very seasonal. Right now I'm in a big toffee phase. So I went through my caramel phase. Now I'm in a toffee phase. My favorite ice cream growing up was mint chocolate chip, and our listeners probably know it's because my dad told me when I was growing up to get mint chocolate chip because no one likes it and no one will ever ask you to taste yours, so you'll have it all to yourself. A man that really knew his ice cream, but yeah, it's very seasonal. It kind of just depends on the mood I'm in on what ice cream I get.
Take me a little bit into your creative process, Matt, in how you try to keep your podcast relevant for maybe investors that are beginners, make sure that there's enough in there for sophisticated investors. How do you prepare to make sure you're relevant?
I don't know the answer to that. That's a really good question. I mean, when I have a guest on, I usually listen to like 3 or 4 episodes that they've been on someone else's or they're a friend. I'm really big right now on thinking through. It's probably better to transition the podcast to more of a current event and deep dive topics than bringing people on in different niches. Because I've had everybody from parking lots to fix and flip people to large office buildings. I mean, that was the goal of the podcast at first, is to expose people to different real estate. But now I'm starting to do the shift of, does it make more sense to talk about like, hey, there's no new supply going into the ground at the end of 2024, which means that in 2026 there won't be new apartment complexes coming to market. Here are the top 5 cities you can look at and help people kind of refine that. But I don't know if I have a good thoughtful answer on that, other than I've always tried to pick different niches and just be curious about that niche when somebody comes on so that I can learn. And hopefully, if I'm learning in the process, listeners will learn as well.
It's a good answer. I wasn't. I never expect anyone to have a perfect answer, especially if it's thoughtful and if the question is good. Hopefully, someone hasn't thought it out before you ask the question. But I think I'll come back to that. I've got some follow-up questions on that. I want to ask you around what's something you've learned from your guests. And if you can, you don't have to remember the name of the guest, but if you can remember the quote or how it impacted you in your approach to investing or finance.
Yeah, I don't think I've got one single thing that I can point to. Actually, there are a few that I'm thinking through right now. Other than the world of investing is so much bigger than I ever thought it was. but it is the world of Kevin Bacon and the fact that everybody is 2 to 3 people away from each other. And so, an early piece of advice I got in my career that has played out in this industry as well as the tech industry was never even have the appearance that you're only self serving, because this industry is very, very small. And if that brand sticks to you, then you'll never be able to shake it and everybody will know. So I think that's one thing I've kind of noticed in this industry is that we're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar industry just in the United States, and everybody is really 2 to 3 connections away. So I could probably get to the chief real estate officer at Blackstone, one of the largest private equity firms in the world, by somebody that's been on the podcast knowing 2 or 3 people and getting to them. So I think that's probably the way I'd answer that question is never appear to be self-serving, because this industry is very small. And if you're always looking out for yourself, if you're never leaving enough meat on the bone for other folks, that will get around and your business will dry up very quickly. And quite frankly, just to go on a tangent here, I've seen that, right? In 2020, 2021, deals were happening, money was being raised, everything was super easy. And in late 2022, it got hard. 2024, some people got their face kicked in. In 2024, you're starting to see a lot of people drop out of this industry because they made the wrong decisions then. So it didn't catch up to them. There's a lot of people in those times that made a couple $1,000,000, but they'll never make another dollar in this industry because of the way they've handled their business and treated other people.
It's good. Almost, I feel like it's advice. It's advice for a 15-year-old. It's advice for a 30-year-old. It's advice for a first person getting into this industry. Can you think of an example where either you vetted a person and the person that you checked on their, credentials with didn't even have to say anything, that all they had to say was shake their head or say, be careful? Or can you think of an example where someone vetted with you and that had already made its word around the market or the industry?
Yes, multiple times. I mean, I was having a conversation with someone the other day. Actually, yesterday, I had lunch with somebody and I said, hey, this group, they're doing RV parks. You're doing RV parks. We're all in the same state, essentially. Do you know them? And that's their first answer was, I'm suing. I'm actually in a suit. I'm suing them right now. I'm in an active lawsuit. And here's why, and here's what they did. And it was enough to make me like not want to ever meet those people. And I know they were kind of on my, these are people I need to get to know because we're all in the same community, all in the same state, doing similar things. And it was enough for me to be like, I don't think I need to meet them. There's also somebody that I was connected with, had several conversations with, very smooth talker, very smooth operator, which should have been like red flag number 1, who is now like on an SEC most wanted list because nobody can find him, and he's basically Ponzi schemed and just something felt off with me enough to make me think like I don't want to be involved or invest with you, but it was enough to make me scratch my head. And if you have that itch, chances are you should move on to the next one because there's always going to be other deals out there. So
I want to go back to your Ironman work. Anyone who's listened to your show knows that you love the sport, and I want to bring it into motivation. And before I ask you the question, I need to be honest. There's no way I could answer this question, so it's kind of an unfair question that I'm throwing at you. But maybe you can do a better job than I. How do you find the motivation to continue doing what you do every day, both as an investor, as a sales guy, as Ironman? Do you know what your North Pole is that keeps you working, even though you could have retired maybe 5 years ago?
Hey, fellow investors. Before we dive into our next segment of the show, I wanted to take a quick moment to talk to you about a fantastic opportunity for you to invest with me. As you know, here at Ice Cream with Investors, I'm passionate about real estate investing and helping you navigate the exciting world of wealth creation through real estate. And that's why, for the first time, I'm thrilled to tell you about an opportunity for you to invest alongside of me. Over the past 3 years, I've been investing in multifamily, mobile home parks, car washes. I've even become the bank and lent out money to fellow real estate investors on a short-term basis. And now you can come join me. If you would like to jump on a call and learn more about this opportunity, head to icecreamwithinvestors.com/invest and find a time for us to connect. And now back to the show.
There's a lot of ways I want to answer that. First of all, I've always been a very internally driven person. I love competition. I love competing. There's something boyish about me that just loves playing sports and love just towing the line and seeing where I'm at. My life's motto is like there's a song by Hillsong called Oceans, and it's spirit lead me to where my trust is without borders. And that's kind of how I view my life is like I want to get to this edge and then just jump and see what happens, sort of thing. The second part of that answer is like I don't know if you saw, but JD Vance is got nominated by the Republican Party to be the vice president nominee. His whole movie was hillbilly eulogy, and there's a lot I can say there. But when I watched that movie, it reminded me a lot of the area where I grew up. I grew up in a very poor coal mining town. All of East Tennessee built the TVA, built the nuclear bomb in World War II. Um, is the backbone of our society and has just been globalized over. And growing up there in the 90s and early 2000s, I was a part of that second generation that, hey, your people did so much for our country and we're just forgetting about them. And there's a certain internal drive to go out there and kind of prove myself that you can grow up in those environments and break free from the situation and the environmental situation that you've been born into. To clarify, my parents were wonderful parents. My dad was a good slash struggling entrepreneur. My mom has her PhD and taught at Virginia Tech. So like I didn't grow up like a lot of people that came from there, but I grew up around that environment. And that's an internal driver for me to know what it's like to be in that environment and never want to go back there. So it's a little bit of paranoia, a little bit of fear, a little bit of stick it to the man and show them, but that's definitely a driver. The last thing I would say is just family dynamics, right? My parents believed in me when they didn't need to or probably shouldn't have. I've given them every reason not to. My sister passed away at the age of 39 and she had Down syndrome. So I just feel blessed that, I'm healthy. I have healthy kids. I have a great career. I have food on my table. I have a roof over my head, all things that Whitney couldn't have provided for herself or couldn't have had for herself. So it would be disrespectful for her to take that as not take advantage of that, to disrespect that. It wouldn't be fair to her. So that's always at the top of my mind as well.
I appreciate your answer. I'm going to still part of it for me, for my answer. If anyone asks me, I think we have similar stories. I grew up in a small town in eastern Kansas of 2,000 people. Probably 70% of the town are renters. Serious drug issues going on. My parents sent me to boarding high school because valedictorian from my hometown flunked out of college their freshman year. Right? They should be the best in high school, and they went to college and they couldn't hold it. So I think I can relate to that. I've heard you speak about your sister Whitney, and I want to sit on this for a minute and ask, how do you? It's going to take me a minute to put these words together. How would you say that you honor her legacy in a day-to-day? How do you think about her? How do you approach life differently? Maybe you work in, special causes that are related to her disability. How does it impact you?
Yeah, I don't think I have the words to describe that other than couple things. One, I donate to a cause. It's called Humankind, for anybody out there that cares to give money to causes like this that help transition Whitney from living in our house and being a young woman to trying to transition to adulthood and getting some autonomy and with supervision and things like that. So Humankind, based out of Lynchburg, Virginia, she lived in group homes with them for 15 years, all the way from 18 until her passing. So I donate to that cause. It's taken me a long time to come to the maturity level to say I can't physically spend time with people similar to her because it just hits me too hard. And it is one of those things. I told my mom that death of a sibling is interesting because it's hard at first. You're almost in shock. Then you go through a grieving period and then you think you're past it. And then something little will remind you of that. And just as something as little as our son the other day was laughing, kind of just, in a he wasn't laughing about a joke. He was trying to be just funny and stupid and things like, but the way he was doing it just reminded me of the way she used to laugh. And I had to be like, you got to stop that. I can't do it. Almost brought me to tears. If I'm at a restaurant and I see somebody like Whitney and it's in my purview, I would rather switch seats with someone else because it just brings it to mind. So to answer your question, I think one, it is donating to causes. Since I'm in a fortunate situation, it's my responsibility to be abundant with the gifts that I've been given, to help people who can't afford to help themselves. The second thing is always trying to remember that when times get bad, life gets hard, things get difficult, that how blessed I am that I'm born with a healthy mind and the ability to be curious and the physical capabilities to go ride my bike and run and do swimming and things like that is just something that I try to keep top of mind.
Around being a triathlete, what is the area that you most need to improve in the next year if you're still competing? I know that you
Uh,
out on this stuff.
yeah, there's a lot of things. One, it's the nutrition. Two, it is
A podcast, ice cream in the title.
that's right. That's right. But like people don't realize nutrition's a fourth discipline to triathlons. Like if you're going to race for 9 to 15 hours, you're going to need to eat and drink something. How you do that, when you do that, how much you do, what sits well with your stomach is a whole different level of game that people don't don't give it enough credit for. Um, but I think it's the little things. Like if you can stay healthy and not hurt yourself, not get in a bike wreck and continue forward, you're going to be better than a lot of people. And that's the same as true as life. Like they talk about with investing, if you just don't suffer any losses over the long term, you're going to be better than 95% of the people out there. Same with true with Ironman. If I don't get hurt, I wrecked my bike one time, broke my collarbone, couldn't be in the pool for 6 weeks, couldn't ride my bike outside for 8 weeks. Those sorts of things, like that loss, I lost that season basically. I still raced that season, but I lost it because I couldn't do those activities. So I think it's that just making sure that I'm doing the little things like stretching every day and doing core exercises to stabilize these secondary muscles and all that that break down over long periods of time. If I do that and can continue to stay focused on doing those little things, then the bigger things will take care of themselves.
Are there any small habits or mindset that you have executed inside of your training as an Ironman that had impact on the rest of your life? And I'll tell you where I'm going with it. About 4 years ago, I decided that I wanted to run an ultra marathon close to my 40th birthday. So I decided that the only way that I was going to be able to train that many of hours, it was a 50-mile race, was learning to live with my own thoughts in my mind. So I made myself train for about 2 months with no headphones, and I made myself train on a high school track. So you can imagine running 20 to 32 miles on a 400-meter track. And I think that that has had an impact on the way that I can approach anything else. I feel like nothing can beat me down. If you can live with your mind for 5 hours to 7 hours of training on a 400-meter track. Do you have any examples like that?
Peter, that's it. Like that's what I'm trying to describe with the fitness thing and the Ironman is like when you set a goal in front of yourself and you know it's going to be hard and you know you can fail at that goal. If you can't fail, then it doesn't count. You have to set a goal that's failable that you can fail at. And when you achieve that, you just view life much differently, your self-confidence and everything about it. Mine really is like I tell people all the time, no one was built to be an Ironman. Like LeBron James, 6'9", 250 pounds of solid muscle, can jump out of the gym. Like that dude was going to be an athlete somewhere. I don't want to disrespect the fact that he does all the little things right too, and everything that makes him great is because of the little things. But he was naturally genetically dispositioned to be an athlete. No one is built that way for Ironman to run 150 miles or do all these kind of stuff. So for me, it's about the consistency piece matters the most. And what I mean by that is Jennifer makes fun of me all the time for this. Like before I go to bed, I'll fill up my waters, make sure my stuff is ready, got my clothes out. I'm creating the momentum to lead myself into the consistency piece. Because I tell people all the time, like, you got to get out there and just start your workout at least. That's your commitment to yourself. It doesn't mean that you'll you're not going to hit every metric in every single workout. You're not going to go for the length of time you need, the miles you need, the intensity you need, all that kind of stuff. But it's about, did you get out there to try to do that or restructure from there? And for me, I think the easiest thing you can do is make it so there's no friction getting to that process. Because if all of a sudden it's like, yeah, but I got to fill up my water and I got to go find my shoes and what clothes am I going to wear and all those little things, then you're at decision fatigue before you get there, which gives you internal reasons not to do it. So, to long-winded way of saying, if there's something you want to achieve in life, usually it requires a lot of small actions done repeatedly. It's never one big action. So think about those little small actions that you need to do and remove the friction from you having to go do them and then force yourself to go do it. And over a year, you'll notice a huge difference. Over 10 years, your life will be completely different than everybody else's.
Love it. I'm going to ask you what's your kind of favorite win from that mindset. My favorite win is, I shared it with you, was, you know, training for hundreds of hours without any noise in my ears. Second win was walking across the finish line with my son on my shoulders after he watched, you know, me run around a track for 10 hours. And then third was I won the race, but I learned more. I showed my son that his dad can finish a race. And secondly, I taught myself that I can live with my own mind. I'm glad I got the medal. I learned a lot more from the journey.
Yeah, that's so powerful and so true. I mean, mine is that in 2015, when I was really deep into my Ironman journey, I was like rated fourth in the world in the age group and made it to the half distance world championship race, which you have to qualify for. And I set a goal that I was going to qualify for it, and it was not easy. I wrecked. I missed time by like 5 minutes on one race, which over 4.5 hours, like 5 minutes really isn't that much if you think about it. That's a pee break. That's getting caught sitting up too much on your bike. But I qualified, and then I paid for my family to go, and it was in Zellemsee, Austria, which is in the Alps in just south of Bavaria. And my mom took me traveling a lot when I was a kid, and that was one of our favorite places, is that whole region. And just the idea that I did it, like, I know that I wasn't the easiest to deal with growing up. I know that there's so much potential locked inside of me that you saw that I wasn't tapping into. But when I set my mind to achieving a goal and I publicly declared it, that I did it, and then had the capability to go take my parents with flights and hotels to pay for that journey on them. There's this one picture of me coming down the finish line where my mom and I are going in for a hug. My brother caught it, and she has the most mom look on her face that you could ever see in your life for your son. And that picture alone will make me cry. It'll make me inspired. It'll do a lot for me. And it was that moment that, yeah, that's probably the highlight of my life up until this point.
You're making me tear up. That's a cool story, Matt. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Matt, as we start to wrap up, I want to go into alternative investments and see how you approach it. You and I both know and potentially friends with Kyle, the head of operations at Web Street. Web Street is a private equity company that invests in online assets or online businesses. When friends, listeners, your audience ask you for advice on how to think about passive versus active investments, how do you teach a beginner to think about that? And then I'm going to lead into Web Street as a passive. What have you learned from real estate to think about online investments as well? Because I know that you've interviewed some e-com experts.
Yeah, it's a bigger conversation. I think first it's understanding, what are you trying to achieve, right? Because you need to have some sort of buy box out there. And a buy box is basically saying, like, I understand this asset class. I understand how this fits with what I'm trying to achieve, and I know how to understand and evaluate this asset. Too many times people have thrown me deals and they say, "Hey, should I invest in this?" And I'm like, "Well, tell me about this investment." And they can't. They're just like, "Oh, it says it's going to do a 10% return or whatever." And I'm like, "Well, how are they going to get to the 10% return?" No idea. In fact, somebody came through our funnel the other day and he was asking about our investments. He's like, "What do they pay out?" And I told him, and it was a guy that clearly has never done real estate before, or never didn't understand what we did. And then he's like, oh, well, I talked to somebody the other day that pays higher, so I'm just going to go do that. And I'm like, good luck. So understanding what your goals are will help you narrow down what is your buy box. And then once you understand your buy box, try to stay within that for at least a year or 2 years to make sure you truly understand that before going on to the next one. So for me, my investment thesis, my investment philosophy, the things that I'm looking for are cash flow generating assets that appreciate faster than inflation over time and have some sort of native tax advantage to them. If I can find an investment that hits those three boxes, then I'm interested. So don't send me a development deal. Don't send me an angel deal. Don't send me a startup deal. Those are not things I'm interested in investing in. Not that I wouldn't understand them, but the mental brain power it would take me to wrap my head around what you're trying to accomplish with this and then figure out if it fits into my mold and then understand the risk and how we're going to offset those risks is way too much for me to go try to accomplish. That if I just say no, I can take that same mental brain power and look at 50 deals that meet my criteria and pick out the one that's going to supersede where I think an investment should be. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but it does start with understand what you're looking for, develop some sort of investment buy box, stay within that investment buy box until you can really master it before you move on to the next thing.
How long did it take for you, as when you started off in the investment world, to figure out your buy box?
I'm figuring it out every day. I mean, that whole talk track of cash flowing generating assets that appreciate faster than inflation and have native tax benefits, it took me 7 years to get to that point. But, with the story I told you earlier about the tenants and toilets, with some of the things that have happened in my single family portfolio this year, like my things that I'm really interested in are evolving every single day. So I think it's good for you to have core assumptions and goals that you want to achieve with investing, but be flexible on your beliefs and your things that you think because it's only during good times that you understand, wow, there's a whole nother area, and bad times that you realize maybe that other area isn't as good as it looks. So you're going to ebb and flow as times progress.
Matt, as head of growth at Web Street, a lot of first time investors that I'm speaking to have, 10 to 20 to 30% of their investment in the real estate space. And the real estate space, is kind of your sweet spot, and it's the leader of maybe the alternative asset category. And they asked me, like, how should one go about analyzing online tools or online assets? I'm interested in your answer. What do you take from your knowledge of a real estate advisor? How would you approach other alternative assets, maybe outside of your wheelhouse?
Yeah, I think the idea of cash flow is something that I'm always interested in. So if an alternative advisor came to me and said, hey, I want to start something, I'm not going to be the investor in that. Doesn't mean, and look, I'm going to miss out on the next Uber, the next Facebook, the next huge investment because of that. But I'm also not going to lose sleep over the fact of what's this investment doing? Is it growing? Is it not growing? Really, you won't know until there's an exit sort of thing. So I think the idea of having a core investment thesis helps you navigate, can this apply to this area? I think what I've seen a lot from your portfolio and a lot of Empire Flippers, the company you guys spun off of from, and talking with Kyle, is that you find those undervalued assets that generating cash flow, where if you slide in the right operations, you can help grow, which is good. That's how you make your return. The second piece that I want to say on this is that real estate is a very asset cash heavy business. All the people that say, oh, you can do all this real estate with no money. I mean, maybe. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people be successful and then in 2 years not be around anymore. So it's like a short-term thing. It's a very asset heavy, cash heavy business. You have to have cash to handle $1 million OpEx renewal and things like that. So the way I would kind of view ecom and online businesses is since I have that in my portfolio as asset heavy in real estate, where are some things in here that are very asset cash light that generate cash flow? So maybe it's not buying a Shopify store or an FBA site from Amazon or something like that. Maybe it's more of an info business or a digital ad business and things like that. That's where I would be looking to round out my real estate portfolio, is saying this asset class is very heavy with cash and assets. If I'm going to invest in another asset class, can I balance it by not having something that's as cash heavy or asset heavy?
I think it's my last question, Matt, around investments and online investments. But if one of your friends or acquaintances came to you and said, "What due diligence should I do on this new asset class, online businesses? What do I need to be looking at? What do I need to look at legally? What do I need to look at returns and carries and admins and portfolio managers?" How would you help them approach that? Let's say it fits what's inside their buy box, but how do you help them do the due diligence?
Here's how I would answer that. I don't know. Here are 5 people I know that do this every day. You should have a 45-minute conversation with all 5 of them and pull out the themes that all 5 of them are saying, and then think about it yourself or use ChatGPT to figure out what questions you want to go ask before entering this space. The question you ask is dangerous enough because it looks like a big softball that I should be able to hit, but I know that it's going to fall outside of my zone of competency. So what ultimately means is I'm going to swing and give you bad advice if I try to answer that question. So instead,
You're only 2 or 3 degrees away from somebody who knows, as you said.
that's right. That's right. So I think it's really a matter of saying, who in my network could I point them to, and not say this is the person that has all the answers, but this is a person that's going to have a perspective on this, and you should compare their perspective with these other people and see what you think after that.
Wonderful, Matt. Are there any items, topics, issues that are coming up for you, your podcast, your investment club, your team, your company that you want to share that I haven't asked you about?
No, I mean, look, we're always continuing to find ways to add real estate to our portfolio. Is now a good time to buy? It's always a good time to buy real estate. You might have to switch what you're buying or how you're buying or the way you're buying and things like that, but it's always a good time to buy real estate. So you'll continue to see us go invest in different real estate asset classes as we continue to grow. But ultimately, I would just flip it and say, I don't have all the answers. I want to hear from listeners. One of my favorite things in the world is when somebody books a call on my calendar and they're like, "Man, I've been listening to you, and I just want to ask these questions." So my calendar is always open to help people. I believe that when I was on my journey through real estate, the only way I was able to navigate that is by finding people that would help me when I had questions. So it's my duty and responsibility to send the elevator back down and help people who are just getting started or who want to enter a different asset class and just want connections. That's my role. So if I can help anybody out there, just feel free to reach out. There's a link to my calendar on our website, icecreamwithinvestors.com. And I love taking those calls.
Love it. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much for, letting me learn more about you as a podcaster, as an advisor, about your company, talk about ice cream flavors, talk about how you'd approach Web Street. And I guess my last comment as we sign off here is, I know that your weakness is not beer, so I'm not going to say it's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's ice cream hour somewhere. What time do you first have your first ice cream scoop?
You can't eat ice cream all day unless you start in the morning.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to Ice Cream with Investors. If you like what we serve you here, it would mean the world to me if you would like, subscribe, and leave a review on your favorite podcast app.